All right, so when we think of Aston Martin, we definitely think of high-end, super luxury, elegance, definitely 007 James Bond. Gotta throw that in there. And we just think of a very high-end vehicle. So let's see what type of features, some of the quirks too, because the car definitely has a few quirky things that we should bring attention to. So the first thing is, there's no sunroof. I mean, this is a very, very expensive vehicle. Like I said, super high end, and yet it doesn't have a sunroof. As a matter of fact, none of Aston Martin has sunroof. So that's one quirk that I found kind of interesting when looking at an Aston Martin, that you don't even get a sunroof. All right, so while we're out on the outside, another cool feature that I like is the doors. The doors don't have any handles that protrude out. They're flush with the door. So as you can see, you just push that and then the door handle comes out. Same thing goes for the rear. Now while we're at the door, you may notice this nice seamless pillar here for the doors. Normally you have a pillar going down here, but this one you don't. And also, the windows are frameless, meaning they don't have that top part of the door. That's similar to like the Maserati as well. However, with this one, without that pillar, you have to open the rear door and the front door window so it can open up either door. So you see it comes down, and it comes down in the front as well. So that's an interesting feature that you don't see on all cars. So in continuing with the outside features, the doors may seem like regular doors. Obviously, they're not Lambo doors that don't go straight up, but they do something a little interesting. They go up and out. So as you can see, it's a kind of a, I don't know what degree that is, but maybe like a 35-degree angle. And this feature is called swan doors. So all the doors do the exact same thing. Rear doors, they go up as well. So that's a cool feature that you don't see on everyday cars. Aston Martin specifically has the swan doors. The reason for that is so you don't hit your curb. So if you were to park on the street and next to a curb, the doors go up enough for it to clear the curb. I think that's a pretty cool feature, to be honest. A lot of more cars should have that. Another pretty interesting quirk is the rear wheels actually stick out further than the front wheels, as you see there. Not really sure why that is, but it's a nice little quirk to know about. So the rear brakes, you know, typically you have drum brakes for the emergency, but on here you actually have a caliper that acts as your emergency parking brake, or just parking brake. All right, so something that we see on cars quite often is the hood scoops or hood vents or levers. I don't know what all you want to call them, but they're usually something on the hood that emulates that it's actually functional, but typically they're not. But on the Aston Martin, they are actually functional. And you can tell because the slits actually are cut out and are used to alleviate a lot of that heat that comes from that big V12 engine out of the engine bay. So another cool feature that we see quite often, but they usually are not functional. So we're in the trunk space in the back. Nothing too fancy, you know, it's a trunk. But one thing that I will point out, in true Aston Martin fashion, this is the button that releases the trunk. It is pretty cool. It's a nice round button, metal that you press, and it releases the trunk. So like I said, nothing special so much about the trunk, but just one of those very detailed oriented features that you can appreciate from Aston Martin. And speaking of the trunk, you do have assisted close. So if you get it close enough, it'll pull it in and lock it all the way. All right, so we're inside the car. We're gonna go over the features that's inside of the Aston Martin Rapide S. The first thing that caught my attention was this. These are the sun visors. You may say sun visors, okay, but look at this. Look how small they are. And I don't even know if that can give a true definition of how small it is. Here's the passenger, I'll show you this. Look at that, that's it. That's all you get. Now, they are small, but surprisingly, they're functional. They actually work. They block the sun from your eye. I guess it's all you need because the roof line is so low that's all you really need for it to block the sun. So it's a little quirk that was pretty interesting to discover. Another interesting feature is the instrument cluster here. If you notice, the RPM dial and the miles per hour dial, they are in opposite directions. So you see, typically they go in the same direction, which is clockwise, but this one goes counterclockwise and the miles per hour go clockwise. It's pretty simple in the inside here, as you can see. We do have a infotainment center or screen. It is pretty basic, to be honest, but it has reverse camera, vehicle status. It does have navigation built in. Within the audio, it does have Bluetooth, so you can do that. It's not a touchscreen. You navigate it through this button here, which is very nice and hefty. These buttons do have haptic feedback that you can turn on and off. The haptic feedback is not that good, but it is something where you know that you're pressing the button. All right, so another interesting feature or quirk is the cup holder. I mean, that's cool that you even have a cup holder in these type of cars, but you do fit a standard water bottle. However, if you want a little Gatorade, you're in trouble because that's not going to fit. And it is not one of those adjustable ones. What you have here is what you have. Another interesting thing about it is that it's actually lined in leather itself. Like I mentioned before, everything's in leather. So to some degree, that's a feature too, that the leather is on everything. Moving on to our next feature is the way you start the car. Typically you have something over here, push button or key. On a Porsche, you have push button, and even on the Maserati, it was on the left side. We don't have that in Aston Martin. In Aston Martin, the button is actually in the middle, and the key has to go in for this to work. So a side note, the key is another cool feature. It has a crystal that has the same logo as it does right there. So when you put it in there, it actually doesn't even look like the key is inserted. It maintains the same look and feel as it did without the key. So that's a cool little feature of an Aston Martin, is that you started in the middle of the car. Another feature is the gear selector is in the same row as the ignition push buttons. That's not abnormal, however, the layout is pretty unique to the Aston Martin. You saw the screen that pops up. When it's off, it actually retracts. Another feature that's pretty interesting is the heating and cool seats. It has one button actually for the driver and the passenger side. And what you do for this is, you have to have the ignition on, obviously. But as you see here, whatever side this light is on, that's the side that is currently active. So if you push that button, then it will slide over to the passenger side. Now, as I mentioned, it is heating and cool with this one button. So if you turn it to the right, it's going to be heat. And if you turn it to the left, it will start the vented feature of the seat. Push this button, it comes over to the driver's side and same function. So I thought that was a cool little feature right there. Pretty interesting to have just one button for two different functions. The glove compartment, that is controlled by electric. Right there, not very deep, I must say. It's so shallow that even the owner's manual has a hard time fitting in there. Which leads me to another feature is the fact that the owner's manual is shaped like this, in this little booklet form. You usually don't see owner's manuals that way. And that's so you can put it down over on the side if you actually want to use your glove compartment. You can see it's a little too big. Now you can kind of finesse it in there to where it will close, but even that's a stretch. So they design it so you can put it over here on the side and it'll fit down like that. So the car does come with dampening suspension. So this, you press it and it will cycle through the different firmness of suspension. Two settings there. It has a sport mode. which is pretty cool. So the exhaust is already very loud. When you put it in sport mode, I'm not exactly sure if it enhances the audio feedback from the exhaust, like a lot of cars do when you put it in sport, but it definitely affects the acceleration. In sport mode, it's crazy. Typical traction, like most cars. AC is pretty self-explanatory, all your standard things. These knobs are really nice. They're metal, as I mentioned before. On the driver's side here, we have our seat functions. So it has the 3 memory and it has the lumbar. It slides forward and back, and then for your backrest. Same thing goes for your passenger side. So there is one little quirk between the driver and the passenger side on the seat adjustments. On the driver's side, you can adjust the height up and down. On the passenger side, can't do that. Only thing you can do is going forward and backwards. All right, so let's get in the back seat and see how that is. All right, so in the back seat we have our entertainment system here. They play DVDs. As you know, DVDs are not all that great in quality, but it has the DVD players. Here we have kind of the main control center for the rear seat. It does have 2 back seat cup holders. They are also in leather, and they are the same size as the front, so can't put anything bigger back here. We have the AC controls here, which is actually pretty nice because kind of right in your line of your face, if you will. So you can really feel them in your face. Right here is your screen that tells you your fan. Right here you can do the temperature. You have your AC button. You can actually lock the door back here. Can't unlock it though, which is interesting. That's a little quirk. And it only locks the back door, not all 4 doors. You have where you control the upper and lower for your AC. And the same thing like the front, this one knob controls left and right side. And if you go to the right, it's heat. If you go to the back, it's ventilated. You do have this big console coming through the middle, so you don't have that much space. You do have a pretty deep storage back here. It does come with a 12-volt outlet. No USB back here though. And you have light buttons here. You push that, that's for the light over there. And you got the light over here, obviously. And that's pretty much all for the back. All right, so the Aston Martin does come with 3 keys. You have your valet key, you have your master key, and you have your crystal key. This is the one with the crystal on the back. So if you were to go, let's say get the car serviced, or you're going to actually valet it at like a restaurant or something, you'll use this key because this key doesn't have any real way to secure it. So if they drop it, they could potentially crack this crystal here. So you give them this. And then in the event that neither of these keys work, then you can use your master key, and this key unlocks the door. So you can see here, there is a key slot, and this is what that master key is for. That goes in there, and it locks it or unlock it. All right, so there you have it. That's just some of the features and the quirks that I have discovered of the 2017 Aston Martin Repeat S. If you have any other ones that I didn't mention, leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, please give me that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell. That way you don't miss any future videos. And remember, do it until you can't. Until next time, I'm out.